Good afternoon, Dr. Elizabeth Law, Chairman Mr. Cheng Yun Kee, Professor Roland Chin, Professor Cheah Kok Wai, honorable guests, and fellow students. It is my greatest pleasure to welcome all of you here to the inaugural lecture, Materials to Produce and Control Light, by Professor Cheah Kok Wai, Dr. Elizabeth K.S. Law, Endowed Chair of Advanced Materials. My name is Priscilla Yu. I'm a Year 4 student majoring in English Language and Literature and English Language Teaching. I am honored to be today's MC. 羅家瑞博士、鄭恩基主席、錢大康校長、謝國偉教授、各位嘉賓、各位同學，午安！歡迎大家嚟臨羅家瑞博士先進材料研究講座教授、謝國偉教授就職講座，發光及調光的材料。我係英國語言文學及英語教育系4年級學生姚正怡，好榮幸能夠擔任今次講座嘅司儀，同時亦非常感謝各位嘉賓能夠抽空出席。To begin with, may I invite Professor Roland T. Chin, President and Vice Chancellor, to deliver his welcoming remarks. President Chin, please. 首先有請香港浸會大學校長錢大康教授致歡迎詞，有請錢校長。
Well, thank you everyone. Thank you coming to this event. I see a lot of students at the back. I hope you enjoy the talk. Chairman of the Council, Professor Cheah Kok Wai. Today we're here, have the pleasure and honor to welcome all of you to Hong Kong Baptist University to this inaugural lecture by Professor Cheah. He has been named Endowed Professor, Dr. Elizabeth K.S. Law, Endowed Chair of Advanced Materials. Established with the general support from Dr. Elizabeth Law, this Endowed Chair aims at further promoting the development of advanced material in Hong Kong BU. And I'm looking forward to listen to Professor Cheah's new advance and learn a few things about lights that change colors. On behalf of the university, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to Dr. Elizabeth Law, Chairman of Park Hotel Property Management. She's an entrepreneur with a caring heart. She has made outstanding achievement in business in the fields of textiles, garments, hotel management, real estate development, and over the past decades, she has supported through the Law's Charitable Foundation to build schools for Hong Kong, to improve universities' facilities, for example, in Hong Kong BU, establish scholarships around Hong Kong, support student exchange, and benefited a large number of students around the world. Dr. Law also served as a member of the Board of Governors and the Entrepreneur Committee of our Hong Kong BU Foundation and has given us valuable support and advices. She is also on the board of the Yan Zai Hospital as director and later on chairman, and is currently vice chairman of the Hospital Advisory Board and honorary trustee of Peking University. She has been awarded the Medal of Honor by the Hong Kong SAR government. I'm here to again looking forward to listen to Professor Cheah, who is an international recognized figure in the field of advanced material. Professor Cheah is the founder and director of our Institute of Advanced Material at Hong Kong BU. He invented the award-winning armor glass, but today he's going to talk about the groundbreaking silicon-based ultraviolet LED. Professor Cheah has many inventions in terms of patents, grants, and a large number of publications, and I'm sure that you'll find his talk very inspiring and learn a few things about what he has been contributing to the world in advanced material. Again, I would like to express our heartfelt appreciation to Dr. Elizabeth Law for her valuable contribution so that our research can continue to excel at the highest international level. Thank you very much.
May I now invite Professor Michelle A. Van Hove, Head of Department of Physics, to introduce today's speaker, Professor Cheah Kok Wai, Dr. Elizabeth K. S. Law, Endowed Chair of Advanced Material. Professor Van Hove, please. 接住落嚟，有請物理系系主任 Michelle A. Van Hove 教授為大家簡介今日嘅主講嘉賓。羅家瑞博士先進材料研究講座教授謝國偉教授，等大家對謝教授有更多嘅認識。
Ladies and gentlemen, have you come to see the light? I'm sure you have come to the right place for that. I'm very honored indeed to have the chance to introduce Professor Cheah Kok Wai, who is in his capacity as Dr. Elizabeth K.S. Law Endowed Chair of Advanced Materials. The only difficulty I have in introducing Professor Cheah is how to pronounce his name. Fortunately, there are several ways that are acceptable, apparently, so I think it will be okay. He was born in Penang in Malaysia, but he undertook his university education mostly at Imperial College in London. There he got his Bachelor of Science in Physics, he got his Master of Science in Materials, he got his PhD in Electronic and Electrical Engineering. So you see the interdisciplinary background that he has and that prepared him very well for his career. He joined BU in 1990. He was head of the Department of Physics from 2008 to 2014, and after that became the associate head of the department. He's been chair professor of physics since 2010, and in that year, 2010, he also founded this Institute of Advanced Materials at BU, and he remains its director until today. Professor Cheah is one of a rare breed of professors he has extensive industrial experience. In fact, before joining BU, he spent 10 years in UK industry, in particular doing research in aerospace. So it's not too surprising that he recently created a startup company. This venture, the startup company, we might call that an adventure, perhaps, stems from one of his most notable scientific achievements, which was just mentioned, his invention of so-called Armo glass, which is this piece right here, you may see later, and a family of similar materials. They have in common that they are remarkably hard and transparent materials that can, for example, protect a smartphone glass and a watch glass. So they're very useful. And as a result of this achievement, of this invention, Professor Cheah received $2 million from the Hong Kong government to start up this company called Cathay Photonics Limited. This company now owns, in fact, 23 patents. It's also very significant, as many of you may know, that 2 years ago at the 44th International Exhibition of Inventions in Geneva, in Switzerland, the world's largest event of its kind, Armo Glass stood out from 1,000 projects competing from 40 different countries, and his invention got the top prize, the Grand Prix Award. In a separate achievement, last year, this same invention also became the champion in an elevator pitch competition. You may know what that is. An elevator pitch competition is a situation in which you have to convince a skeptic within a ride in the elevator, in the lift, that you should buy or invest or take on this idea. I understand that Dr. Alfred Chan of our Knowledge Transfer Office was instrumental in achieving this result, both from the point of view of the startup company and in the elevator pitch itself. Indeed, Professor Cheah has accumulated an impressive record of research grants, publications, patents, and I also don't have the time to summarize even all those achievements. He also became a fellow of the Institute of Physics of the UK and earned several more awards, including some within BU. So let me return to the topic of light. No doubt you're aware how important light is in our daily life. The source of our energy is, or most of our energy by far, is the sun, sunlight. Our means of communication are more and more dominated by light, such as optical fibers that transmit communications. And we shouldn't forget our eyes, which are so important in our daily lives. We also have butterflies, which actually match something. So that explains everything. So Professor Cheah, since his early days at BU, actually dedicated himself to research in several areas of optics, optoelectronics, optical materials. And I'll let him explain those terms to you in his talk about materials that produce light and control light. So I'm sure you will now see the light. Thank you.
Let's give a big round of applause to invite our speaker, Professor Cheah Kok Wai, to share with us his wisdom and insights on materials to produce and control light. Professor Cheah, please. 多謝 Van Hove 教授，請到台下就座，讓我哋以熱烈嘅掌聲恭請今日嘅主講嘉賓謝國偉教授同大家分享佢對發光及調光的材料嘅真知灼見。有請謝教授。
Dr. Elizabeth Law, Council Chair and President, honorable guests, learned colleagues, friends and students, and thank you for coming. Well, thank you for actually sitting here and bearing with me for the next probably around about 50 minutes of really I'm reminiscing what I've been doing. And well, most of the time I will speak in English, but occasionally I'll lapse into Cantonese for those who perhaps find the English technical terms a little bit too much to grasp. Let me come down here. Oh, I got this on. Well, this is more or less what I'm going to do, but it's not necessary in the sequence. In fact, introduce about what is light and color in nature, and how we perceive color, in fact, why we are perceiving them, and then a little bit on the light and matter interaction. Then I'll move on to areas which I'll be working. Basically, before, at the end, we'll talk a little bit about the armor glass, and then with a conclusion. Before I go into all that, I'll talk a little bit, one slide about myself. And don't laugh. This is me back in my first day in London when I first arrived, taking my A-level. My first morning. I arrived, delayed the flight. It was midnight, way past midnight. I woke up and we took a picture of me there in August, 31st of August actually. And that's me around about sometimes in 1978. And in my labs, part of those are all our fellow students. We're all doing PhDs. There, he's still in London. He's over in Norway. I don't know where he is. He's actually in Canada. And he's over here, 2012. And he's a professor in the University of Saskatchewan. We're still in contact. He actually visited our department too, in fact. So, and the other guy is Harry Ruder. Is also we all graduated from the same department in Imperial College at various times. So it's nice actually to be able to keep in contact. Over here, 2004, this is part of our group while we're doing research. Professor Zheng Wanhua, she is my first PhD. And you see her here, 13 years on. Only last in November, we have a meeting. And all these, including Zhang Lu, they all have taken their PhD with me. And then he's standing there. And we have a little bit of gathering on our own group, informal exchange, swapping idea and looking at potential collaboration and so on. So we're keeping contact. Others, if you bear in mind, you will see Billy. That's Billy here, Tam Hoi Lam, and he's over there. So this is mentioned that Li Guixing, who is now in the Nanfang Keji Daxue as associate professor. And his wife was also my PhD student, Chen Sumei. Now she's in Birmingham. She has the Marie Curie Scholarship. And for 2 years, I think she's richer than me, actually, in research grants. So this is a short introduction. And this one is this group are 1993 graduate. There's a reunion back in 2004. And I found this picture, so I have to show that. And behind that, there's Wallace, and he's a professor now in Hong Kong U, EE, Wallace Choi. So we have been, some of us has been keeping in contact for quite a while. Coming back to light, bear with me if you already know this, but anyway, here you are, the electromagnetic spectrum. Really, light is only part of that, a very small part of that. And if you look at the scale and everything, here you have the infrared of radio wave and so on, and then you have the UV here, and you can see the size. Basically, everything we call here is called electromagnetic wave, and we only see a small part of that from our eyes. And all these are governed by 4 equations that was formed by Maxwell. Back in the turn of the 19th century, before the 20th century. You still see his desk in Cambridge, if you go there. And why are we seeing only that part? And also why are we, in fact, all of you will see, our eyes, most sensitive part is actually green. And I'm sure a lot of you, your parents will ask you to look at the green. It's good for you. Because we are more sensitive to the green, and you don't use that much energy and focus, so you're more relaxed. And why are we looking at the green all the time? Because if you look at the evolution of the plant, starting from your left, it was only around about 130 million years ago that flower beginning to appear. Before that, everything is green. There's no flowers, there's no fruits, so you don't have other colors. You always be seeing green. So that's how we evolve. As our eyes evolve, we're actually seeing green more often. And we retain that. In fact, if you look at the small monkeys, so the monkeys, most of them are colorblind. They can't see red. Because they haven't actually evolved beyond that. We see it, and the primates see it. And as because of, I don't know whether it's the stress of environment or whatever, there's a mutation of the green. And move it to the red slightly. And then you have 3 colors. Then you see everything, all the colors. So it's an interesting evolution. And we see things because of we follow the evolution of the planet. And that's how we so-called perceive and see things. And our only light source at that time is only the sun. And therefore, that's why we make all our light, is we're trying to simulate and emulate sun's light. That's why we look at something, if the light is not so-called natural, you just say the color looks funny, because we say funny because it doesn't look the same as under the sun. That's what we mean. And if we don't know that, then we know why how we design the light and the lighting and how we do it. And however, if you look at that, coming here, we just show you here how our green light here is more, in fact, sensitive than the others. And in fact, the sun itself has a different so-called color temperature, the way we look at it, from morning to the noon to the evening. And let me jump from this. I have to come out here. I was talking. If you look at that, is that from the moon light, you can see the color temperature is about 4,000. And in the morning and evening, you will see a little bit more, like 5,000. When it's noon, and there will be 6,000. Overcast is a little bit more. Clear, smooth sky at the North Pole is a lot more. And that actually, our mood, everything's changed with that. That's why if you have a bit more blue light, you feel more energetic, excited. And in the evening, you have less blue, so you're beginning to feel sleepy. And it's through the evolution that we have. and also why we are advised not to look at your mobile phone and your tablet so much at night, because you have a lot of blue light, your body thinks is in the middle of the day, so you feel very energetic. It's not that blue light is wrong for you, it's just that it's the wrong time, that's all. So we actually, in fact, the normal light, what we see here now is that we cannot produce this type of changes. But solid state light can. By subtly tuning the combination of red, blue, and green, then you can, in fact, change what you call the mood light, and makes you, in fact, your mood suit the day. And that's very helpful. It doesn't actually affect you very much in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong is closer to the equator. But if you are up in Siberia and you have 3 months of, darkness where you have only maybe 4 hours of daylight, you can get very depressive because you're lacking the light daylight. Then you need those light to elevate and change your mood. And that's important. And also if you are patient and you need some good sleep, you need those mood light to tune it so that you have a good rest. Those are in fact quite important. That's the difference between, in fact, once you understand that, you can apply the technology and try to help everyone. Coming back to here. So you could see that here that the development of solid state light is that you started with almost more than 100 years ago. That you have the tungsten lamp. And as you move forward to fluorescent lamp and high-pressure sodium lamp and so on, before in the 70s that you started having LEDs, it's only now step into the 21st century that begin to have solid-state lighting. And that's possible. It's only using solid-state lighting that you can start tuning the so-called mood of the light. And those are the applications which is very much possible. It's not just... it's more than just energy saving. It's actually the well-being of individual too. So this is something which actually we have yet fully understand on that. This to show you that in the year 2000, LEDs and organic LEDs has already surpassed in terms of brightness all the incandescent light and the fluorescent light has already surpassed. The only thing is that it's a little bit more expensive. It's up to the industry now is to make it more economical. So now back to my own stuff. One of the first things when I arrived joined a university, I started work on a type of silicon called porous silicon. It's actually we use the acid to age it so that there's a lot of holes inside, so it's very porous. It's very bright. If you shine a UV light onto it, it emits light very bright, very efficient, more than usually the silicon itself. But it's not very good in if you inject electricity. We've been trying very hard until around about 1998, 99. It's one of the last projects. You find a project, I say, well, this is it. If we can't do it, that's it. We give it up. And we successful of getting what we call electroluminescent. That means injecting currents into it to make the lights coming out, just like LED. Then once we look into the mechanism, we realize our luminescence is not so much due to the silicon from the gas itself. Because the porosity, we actually traps a lot of gas inside. And if you have electrodes in there, applying electric field, because it's very thin, it's something like 1 micron. So even 1 volt, we are talking about, is something like almost a million volt in there, the field. So the high field actually ionize it. It's very similar to the fluorescent lamp. So that we have what we call gas discharge, and you have light emitting because of the gas being plasmonized, so it could be ionized. And it coming out in UV. What we have shown here is actually we put a sheet of blue dye onto it. The dye absorbs the UV light and give you blue light. So we can do it. If UV light, you can use it as antibacterial, or you can do it at any colors. And we thought it was interesting. And we all we need is actually apply only 20 volts, so it's very small compared to, there was another group working on it, they have to apply 100 volts. That's because they used the wrong material for electric contact. How did we manage to get to the right one? Actually, by luck. We were using gold and we ran out of gold. We went down to Hang Seng and we buy a gold coin and we cut it. and when we ran out, at that time my student, now he's somewhere sitting here, out there. And we said, go to next door with Professor So to get borrowed. We borrowed, now he's using pure gold. And then we couldn't reproduce the result. I said, that's funny. I said, have you got any more gold left? He said, yeah, try it again. They said, oh, it's working. I said, let's analyze the gold. It turns out there's copper inside. So the gold coin from Hang Seng is not pure gold, I'm sorry. They have coppers inside. And it's this copper gold alloys that makes actually the voltage lower. We analyze it and then we use a better ratio of it and get it down to 20 volts. That was actually something which we learned, that once you find an opportunity, you grab it and find out exactly how you do it and make the best out of it. And we say we could apply a patent. So we applied that patent, and as it turned out, it was the first patent of BU. We didn't realize that. So this is, in fact, you can see the cross-section of the polysilicon. This is a layer, which is about a micron, and we eat into it, into lots of holes. These are the bigger one, and within the bigger one, you can see those very, very tiny, and if you can read there over here, these are like here, this is, this part is about 10 nanometers, and those are about 50 nanometers. So they're very, very tiny holes. And what we did is that we put in vacuum, extract some gas. We could put other gas inside, different gases, and give you different colors. So that was quite fun, actually. Then we move on a little bit, and this is something also at that time was some interest looking at the various living things, the models that they have structures, which have what we call photonic structures. And I get caught on, I was looking at butterflies. These are the popular top butterflies. You could see that they have same genesis, but they have different colors. And we look at that, and we discover, in fact, that they generate two types, two ways of giving you colors. One actually is a color dye. The other one, in fact, is nanostructure on the wing. Instead of using color dyes. And that gives you the different colors. And you can have from brilliant green to metallic golds and so on. And it's very interesting. In fact, this is done obviously through evolution. And when we realized that I've been asking and said why, look at the distribution, regional distribution of that. Generally, we have some understanding. If you're in tropic and subtropic, near equator, most of the butterfly will have nanostructures. If you go into, like in Hong Kong and above in temperate, most of them have color dye. And I was wondering why, and then I found a possible answer. Because the sun is strong in equator, it's very bright. So if you use a nanostructure to reflect color, and more efficient. Also the sun, being bright, we all get sunburn, you have UV. And UV light will destroy your dye. So the butterfly will spend a lot of energy replacing it all the time. And it really instinctively will say you don't want to do that. So you switch over to using nanostructure, which is less energetic. It's very interesting. But if you're in temperate, the sun is weaker. And you have also the seasonal. So in the spring and autumn, you're less sun, so your color is not so brilliant if you're using nanostructures. So you use dye, and the dye will last a little bit longer with a lower and lesser UV light. So there are more butterflies using dyes. That's a clever bit about evolution. you survive, you learn. You have plenty of time, so you have millions of years slowly doing it. It's very clever. Now, the starter to that is that the so-called lenses and reflections started very early. This is something I was looking around. We found that this is a very simple sea creatures. It's called brittle star. I wouldn't attempt to really to pronounce it, but it has a very, very rude kind of a rough kind of rudimentary lenses that focus light onto a sensor. The sensor cannot tell it cannot tell actually the object, but it can see whether there's a shape or darker or brighter. So if you assume at the bottom there is the brittle star there, if it will cast a shadow, the brittle star realizes there's something on top. It could be a predator. It will start moving away. So it's a very instinctive doing. And from this kind of evolution, eventually you get into be able to see sharper images and discerning whether it's a friend or foe. And coming back to the butterfly here if you look through here in the scanning electron microscope, you can see actually it scales, very much like fish scales. It's very interesting. And in fact, the scales here, if you look carefully, is that not all of them are identical. All these are identical, then these are another type. So they are not all identicals. So they are interlacing. And if you look carefully, deeper inside, you will see even more details. And we were looking at the three types of butterfly between the Papilius genesis, the blue-bay, Paranthus, and Ulysses. And you can see they are slightly different. Even the green color, they are in different region. And Ulysses is more interesting because you can see this is kind of bluish green turquoise color. If you're looking at a very acute angle, it's actually blue in color. So that there was a change in color. What we did is that we're looking at the area, 1, 2, and 3. And 1 and 3 is the same. You can see these scales here like 1 and 3. And if you look very carefully and very enlarge it, you see lots and lots of holes inside. What it is trapping the light and then stopping it from reflecting. And because there's no light reflecting, it's black. It's not a black dye, it's simply just trapping light, making it stopping light coming out. So, whereas if you're looking at that side, it's completely different. There are scales like, if you look into here, you can see there are scales like thing. It's not this. So in this part, the black part is the trap lights. On the color part is that they have scales. Scales which we look into further, and you can see that even within the scale, as you showed before, that some have this structure, which is quite a large scale, and some actually have this serrated type of scales. And in fact, it's this that gives you the color. So not all of them are giving you the color, only some of them. And that's sufficient for us to look at that and see it's green. So they are actually quite clever. Is that they are saving energy. They don't need to have everything. You only need a little bit, sufficient number of those scales to give you the color. And if once we look into that, what we've done is that we actually zoom into all those little scales and we cut a hole in the middle using ion beam. And that's the surface. And if you look at here, it's like wafer. It's many layers. It's like wafers. And it's not easy to cut this. It took us weeks. Why? We found that if you cut it at the wrong frequency, the whole wing was flapping like this. and then you can't cut it anymore because you can't stop it. And we have too much energy onto it. Basically, this is, of course, it's organic, it's cuticles. They melt like wax. they start welting. You see a little bit of that. So we took a while, quite a bit there before we cut it, and then we can still see it. And you can count the layer. You can see a little bit of melting. You can count, then we count the structure. So basically what we see is that this is solid, and then we have empty space in the middle. So it's a bit, in physics we'll say that you have one solid material, you have air, solid material and air. So you have two different materials, you could say air and solid material. That gives you what we call a one-dimension reflecting layer, what we call bright reflectors. And that's amazing. And we are looking at here is 300 to 100 nanometers. So nature has been working on nanomaterial long before we start thinking about what's nano. And they're working it, very cleverly. We still don't know why the surface has all this structure. We still don't know the function of it. There must be some function there. It's not flat. It's not sort of plain. They have a lot of random structures here. We don't know that. But at that time, we were focusing on this. And what we have done is that looking at the spectrum. I won't go into all details. We change angle from directly shining to it to a glancing angle. And we take all this and we plot it as what we call the color, as the color changes. This is your viewing angle, but you see this is the wavelength. Anything from yellow, green to UV, and that changes with the color. And the peak of that, just now what you see just now is sort of the peak here, the peak of that, and we plot that. The red dot is the experiment. What we see, because we know the solid, we know exactly the organic materials, what we call refractive index, we know what's the air is. Then we put that in, we simulate that, and we plot, and we have a curve simulation. Then we know then the layers. And how those layers, how many layers and what effects they are. We can simulate that. And we work doing the same thing for Ulysses again. And again, we can see that we use that to give you this different kind of changes in color as you're looking at different angles. And parentheses, again, you can see here the layers. Here this structure, this is looking actually quite good, much better than the Blume one. And again, we plot that carefully, and then what we've done is that we're summarizing them, the three butterflies, Blume, Parenthesis, and Ulysses. And you can see here is that in fact the Ulysses have 6 cuticles, so 6 layers solids, and Blume has 7, Parenthesis has 8. And the thickness is different too, from about 90 nanometers to over 100 to just over 93, or just about 93. And then what we do is that we do some fitting. As I say, cuticle is polymer. We know approximately the refractive index will fit in. What we've done actually, we changed the air. Air normally is 1. And while we are fitting it, we say, well, because you cannot suspend everything in air, so they have pillars inside, a little bit of things to holding it. So it's a little bit more than 1. So we trial and error doing it, and I found that there is. You have thicker, you need more pillar. So you have a little bit higher refractive index. You have less layers, you have a little bit smaller refractive index, you have less pillar. So we fit that, and that shows you that in fact is that by having different periodicity of different layers, and by having slightly different thickness, they can actually change color. Just a subtle difference, that's all. And they will change color. And so the butterfly, by doing that, and regional differences, some butterfly will have their midwing having color, someone have their tails have colors. creating those structures and creating slightly porosity and thickness, they can give you all sorts of colors. That's a very, very clever way. If you imagine is that one day we might be able to do that on our clothes. You don't need dye anymore. You walk in here, you get all the colors you want. But essentially there's no color, there's no dye there. It's just a pure reflection. And that would be a possibility too. We tried that on silicon, actually it works. We actually etch these layers and it actually give you this green color without dyeing. And that's quite interesting. And you can see here, we summarizing here is that the parenthesis is in the black triangle, and then the inverted red triangle is the blue May, and then you have the Ulysses is the diamond blue. You can see the diamond blue here essentially is give you the bluish green, the blue, if the different viewing angles, and parenthesis is actually over in more on the yellow green, and then blue May will give you the light green to bluish thing. So what they do is that they can differentiate their species by just doing that, and it's actually quite interesting. There are a few things we haven't get around to do it. For example, they are also polarization sensitive. So if the butterfly actually are facing this way with the wind, you can see the color. And a certain, if it turns to 90 degrees, actually it's actually the color down, and you won't see it. We're wondering why. One possibility is that if you're looking for mates or friends, you want, on the tree, you're moving around like this. If you feel that there's a predator around, you turn 90 degrees very quickly. You kind of disappear because you're colored down and you don't see it. It's interesting. I always feel that somehow the living things, they find a way surviving and displaying themselves. So summarizing on that is the color iridescence of the Blumey family, basically using what we call air-filled multilayer bright refractor. That's evolved in the wing itself. It is polarization sensitive and give you colors. And by changing the layer number, the periodicity, the thickness, they give you different colors. That colors allowed you to basically differentiate this individual species, recognition. So it's very color. I just been told that I've got 5 minutes. I just started. I better gallop a bit. Come back to this. Let me move forward a little bit. This is something we work on, organic LEDs. This is what we call transparent. If you are not passing any current, lighting it up, it's actually transparent, side window. As you pass current, then in fact you get more and more. You can see the display, so you can use it as a window. And then if if you are display, you see it. If you're off, it's a window. Again, you can see that. And the inventors of the very quick introducing the inventors of all these organic LEDs. Here they've been here in 2013, actually in Siu and the small molecule, which most of you are doing now in Samsung mobile phone and others, Professor Ching Tang, Deng Qingwen, originally from Yunlong, and Fred Chen from Taiwan. He has been actually with BU for 8 years in the IM. And Professor Donald Bradley. Donald was the honorary degree last year. And we do an annual gathering in 3 places here, Hong Kong, in UK, and also in Changchun, to have an informal exchange of our research and also collaboration. One slide on other organic materials we use something like a nonlinear property. our con, and we're working with our chemistry colleagues in BU. We have actually, they make all these molecules, and we do some study the optical properties. This one is actually lasing, and we're using, in fact, infrared light, but able to produce the color, optical color lasing. Here is a material that can give you a lower voltage, able to give you red light, and then if you higher voltage, give you blue light, and this work on as a sensor. This material is produced by Professor M.S. Wong. This is from Gary Wong, and this is our VPRD from Rick. We'll move on to the metamaterial is an area now. We have in Hong Kong we have AOE. I'm part of that, and basically it's artificial materials which can interfere and control light, and it's not available in nature, so it's man-made, and we could use that to control light. And it was originally proposed by a Russian scientist, and then in 2006, David Smith, at that time now in Endowed, at that time in UC San Diego, shown that it's possible. He used a design by Sir John Pentry, who also is our honorary doctor, and shown that it's actually possible experimentally. And here, back 2001, again in Suzhou, there was a big workshop, and you could see Davis and Sir John here. Sir John has been a regular visitor of us. And you could see here is that if you can control light and you can bend light, like this is shown here, you can actually cloaking, similar like Harry Potter, where the lights bend around it. And therefore, because the light goes around it, we assume light is traveling in a straight line. You don't see the object. You assume the object is not here. But the trick always people ask is that, is it good? If you can invent it, is it good for you? I would say no, because if there's no light coming in here, you can't see outside too. You'll be blind. So if it's, remember in Harry Potter walking around in the library, well, he's lying because he can't see where he's going. It's not possible. The caretaker can't see him, and he can't see the caretaker either. So we did some work on it. I will jump a little bit here. What we've done is that we do a little bit of holes in a gold layer. And by doing this, we're creating a two-dimensional gold layer that actually creating a special property using the free electrons inside gold, what we call plasmonic. And in so doing is that this is an experiment, is that we shine the lights onto it, and then we collecting, it's creating what we call harmonics. In this case, it's the third harmonics. That means that using infrared light, you can actually get the shorter wavelength of visible light. And this is what you see, is that we use over in the near-infrared wavelength from 1,600 odd nanometers to 1,800 nanometers here, which we can't see, but then you can see all different color coming out. And that gives you actually a cheaper way. Nowadays, you still have to use crystal, but eventually we hope that we can perfect this, that we can have a cheaper and more efficient way of producing different colors. This is the spectrum of that. I'll jump a little bit because of time. We have another structure here where we have silver. We have a matrix of silvers there. Underneath that, we have what we call microcavity. We have an insulator sitting on the outside, 2 layers of silver. We're creating what we call a standing wave inside the cavity, and that can couple to the plasma electrons inside there. And by exciting this, the energy actually can transfer and they interact. What we have done shows here is that this is what we call the plasma, we shortly call SPP. This is the cavity mode. They're broken up in the middle because they have exchange of energy. So it opens up a gap. That gap actually can be allow a light to transmit or reflecting light. Depends on how you look at it. So what you do is that you can open up a gap in really very, very fast in what we call femtosecond. Very fast switching, optical switching this way. And this way is that you can actually control where to do it, what wavelength, and how fast you can do it. So it's a kind of a optical switching mode. And we use this. It's the first time that has been shown that you can use that using plasmonic or metamaterial to do that. And another type of third harmonic is that what we've done is to do in the nanostructure is that we actually put some polymer onto it. And that polymer can enhance the structure using very similar property, gold, an insulator, and then an array of gold. And then we deposit the polymer onto it. I'll skip that. We can then generating, again with infrared light, we can generating blue light. The infrared light is actually 1,340 way in the near infrared that we can generate in blue light of it. We can use the same this kind of structure not only on rigid body, we can also deposit onto plastics and make it flexible. And we actually have a patent granted. Is that right, Alfred? It's granted, right? 2, or we got 2 granted, right? Thank you. And you can see we can fold it. Therefore, we can use it as a sensor, and we can put it around anything, which is not necessarily have to be plain, any structures. So, summarizes that we can, in fact, using our understanding in plasmonic is that we're creating different structures, and they have what they call very high nonlinear optics characteristic, which you can generating and using infrared to give you visible light. And why using infrared? In fact, well, if you're using near infrared, our eyes is not sensitive to it. So there's no danger. Normally, if you want to generate visible light, you use UV light, higher energy. And our eyes is sensitive to UV light. So near infrared is eye safe. And therefore, you can actually have a safer way of designing all this generating visible light. Here, bigger pause. This is the group about almost 5 years ago. And you see just now I mentioned already Zhang Lu. We have Tam Hai Lam again here. And Gui Xing at that time hasn't graduated. And we have our first PhD student from Iran. She just finished and gone back to Iran. And Eric here mentioned Eric did his master here. Now he's doing a PhD in Germany. And we just met. He came back for Chinese New Year, so we met only a few weeks ago. Now come back to this armor glass thing. And I think everybody knows who they are, so I won't really introduce everybody. And we have a spin-off company, and we founded in September 2014, and that is supported from the ITC tissue. And we started with 1 patent, and now we have 23 patent filed, and with 2 granted and 2 allowed to grant. So, yeah, altogether 4, yes. And back in 2006, we are terribly lucky and honored that we won the Grand Prix and also the gold medal under our own category and a special award of invention by the Romanian Association. And there's a few pictures here showing that at that time when we were there as a judge, really digging into our thin film and see whether they can scratch it or not. And then we were interviewed by the exhibition's press. At that time, we knew we won something. We didn't know that it was a Grand Prix. This is a very quick snapshot of the hall, the exhibition hall. And this is what we have taken in. And by the way, here you are after the talk. If all of you are interested, you can come down and have a look. And this was last year's elevator pitching, where in fact I'm not that articulate. It was Alfred who was getting into the elevator and have to persuade the judges in under 1 minute. I think it's about 58 seconds on to tell them that this is a good technology to invest into. And yeah, we were very honored that we won, and also generate a lot of publicity and attracted quite a few investors too. And how hard it is, the hardness. Well, this is a graph, this is the line to show you different materials. Conundrum reactor is the name for sapphire. You can see here is that for plastic, the generally is very, very soft. In terms of pencil, H scale is the pencil scale, H, B, and B is about 1H to 4H. In terms of mold scale, which is generally for stones, and the hardest is diamond, second hardest is sapphire, is very low, mold 2 and 3. And window is, ordinary window glass is about 5. And if you have tempered glass like Gorilla Glass, it's about 6.5. And our products can be from 7 to 8.5, depends on which material you put it on. And if you look at that, is the reference, the sand is about 6.5 to 7. So once you're above 7, then it will be difficult to scratch your harness. And stainless steel, actually interesting enough, it's not as hard as sand. And this is basically we're putting a very thin layer, less than a micron. We talk about several hundreds of nanometers of sapphire onto it, and we be able to tune it so that it becomes hard and can be as hard as almost as the sapphire single crystal. And we use, in fact, quite standard industrial deposition method called physical vapor deposition. And most of the industry now, in fact, all of them who are doing some kind of thin film deposition will have this kind of equipment here. And therefore, what we can do is that we help them to adapt, and then they can get onto the, they can actually start manufacturing of it. And the key advantage, of course, is hard, and it's also transparent. And because it's thin, only a few hundred nanometers, you can actually flex it a bit. So you can even put it onto plastic, and you're not too worried that you could break it. And it's only a third of than the pure sapphire substrate. And transmission is good, better than sapphire itself, which is only 85%. And of course, it's cheaper than sapphire crystal, because sapphire crystal normally will take you at least 2 weeks to grow it. And because sapphire is second hardest, you can only slice it using diamond paste. And that also takes a long time. And then polish it. And when you get to very thin, they can break, because it being hard also means it's fragile. So it's costly. And as I mentioned, we're using standard manufacturing equipment, so that can be adapted for mass production easily. And potential markers have all this. Quick introduction, the board members. We have a BU representative, and also we have a VC presence too. And we have 2 advisors from Berkeley, Professor Situ, whom most of you are familiar with, and Ken Simmer, who is also the managing director of the Sudacha Center, and he himself has been an entrepreneur. And I think that one of his companies was sold to Apple, too. Yeah, we are now, the company itself is in Sanpogong, not too far from here. And we have some of the equipments are already there, as including, this is, I think it's the latest of the what we call nano intenter, the latest in Hong Kong. that can measure thin film hardness. Before we in fact started, most of what we call the hardened materials are what we call bulk, very thick, a few micron. And now only in the last 2016 and 27, thin film hardness and everything beginning worldwide recognized. So this is one of the few machines that can measure that kind of hardness. And then we have a few, of course, thin film deposition machines. This is the group. If you remember the 2013, in fact, you have Zhang Lu and Amy. In fact, all of them except Henry's are all graduate from physics. They either have their master or their PhD, and or except perhaps Ivan, who's sitting over here, who is a PhD student of Professor. So the rest actually have done some project with me. So and Henry's from CTU. We're not very biased about it. We're just slightly biased. and because of that, because they have been working together as a team, even in the lab, so they have very good understanding and support of each other. And that makes the work very smooth, a lot faster and quicker. So, in conclusion, is that our interest is interested in how light interacting with matter in materials, and that allows us to, in fact, creating a lot of materials that can be applied across a lot of applications. We learn how to emit light and also manipulate light. And what really we want to do in our work is to understand the fundamental physics behind it. Once we understand that, then we'll see if the knowledge can be applied. It's not necessarily all of them. Some of them give you a more fundamental understanding. That's fine. Then we publish it. If we can apply it, we patent it. And we try to get some money out of it. Then it will help us to do the next research. So we've been working on, and we are interested, we also understand about how nature evolved, how also they converge into using nanostructure to control light. And in fact, our curiosity about making thin film hard lead us to invention of the armor glass, which now have opportunity to apply to the industry. And lastly, I'd like to thank, on behalf of the team, the support of all this, Dr. Elizabeth Law, the university, RGC, ITC, Culture Foundation, Alan Gong, and the NSSC. And I won't read through all the names here. These are the people who have been the team, the collaborators, and associates. Just to give you, the color coding here is the blacks, and those are either in Hong Kong or has been in our group. The red ones are from mainland. The green ones are from Asia. And the blue ones are from the West, the Europe or USA. And with that, thank you.
Now, please put up your hand if you have a question. Our staff will pass the microphone to you. And before asking your questions, please tell us your name. 而家係發問嘅時間，請大家喺發問前請先舉手，我哋嘅工作人員會遞咪俾你。喺發問之前，我哋亦都希望你可以介紹一下你叫咩名。Thank you.
I heard that green light can soothe the pain of migraine, while blue light can reduce organ damage during operation. Can you share more about the effect of color light on human body? Thank you.
Oh, I'm not exactly a biologist or medicals. But usually is that for green light, it's associated what I say, is that you use what we call less energy, less constraint when you're looking at green light, because our eyes is very more sensitive to the green. And your migraine is due to your stress or muscular tightening. Then if you're looking at green light, eventually is that you are more relaxed. So that might be one of the reasons that help you to soothe it. whether or not the blue lights will help out in the operation, I'm really not too sure. I cannot answer you on that one. Sorry.
Thank you. Professor Cheah, that was a fascinating talk.
Thank you.
I really loved the color-coded credits at the end, which are very much in keeping with the theme of the lecture. For a few moments, actually, at the beginning, I thought I had wandered into the wrong lecture by mistake. I thought it was a biology lecture with touching on entomology and marine biology. Now, it seems to me that some of your most fruitful early research resulted from bridging phenomena that would have been claimed by traditional disciplines as proprietary. So this interaction between disciplines has obviously, inspired you and borne a lot of fruit in your research. May I ask whether you were originally interested, perhaps as a hobbyist butterfly catcher, or did you just stumble upon these phenomena?
Well, no, actually, in fact, at that time, there was a general worldwide, global interest. Some of us working in optics, optical materials on so-called photonic crystal, where you can then also, again, is controlling lights and producing light. And then somebody, in fact, one of the first to point out is Zhi Jian in Fudan University, is a peacock, have this so-called photonic structure. Then everybody start looking around and say, what else? What other animals? And in fact, I forgot to mention, I have a friend in Penang who actually have a butterfly farm. So I asked, can I have some samples? Because maybe they have it. The bees has it, hummingbirds has it. It's harder to catch hummingbirds. And also it's harder to get the hummingbird to stay still too. And also I learned very quickly is that you cannot catch butterfly in Hong Kong without a license. It's illegal. So I have to have somebody to give it to me. Those butterflies that die naturally, you can't go around and kill the butterfly and do it. So I got them to collaborate and give me some of those butterflies. And also because he has a good selection, so I can get all the 3 species all from them. So it's easier for us to do that. So that's one of the reasons. But I was very, very surprised to realize, in fact, all this nanostructure. I was really quite amazed by that. In fact, we did some work looking at beetles as well. Also give you that sort of structure. But instead of having so-called air, the structure, each layer rotate a little bit on angles. So what we call chiral. And again, that's why they give you the metallic color, because the color slightly spread out. They give you the metallic color looking. And also that's quite fascinating.
Thank you. It appears that nature still has a lot to teach us, but only if our minds are open to the lessons it will teach us. And obviously, yours has been. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, that's a very good conclusion, and I think very appropriate because time has run out, unfortunately. I'm asked to give a few concluding remarks on my side, and I wish to thank Professor Cheah again for exposing us to a subject that has obviously a very bright future. Sorry about that. After all, we've come a long way since the Chinese invented fireworks, and since Archimedes set enemy ships ablaze with mirrors, all using light. So today we take a lot of devices for granted, like even laser pointers and these curved smartphone devices, 3D television sets, and so forth. What most of us don't see, most of you maybe don't see, is the work that goes on behind the screen, behind the efforts to develop these. It takes many years, many trials and failures, and many attempts. So there's careful and painstaking research that is needed for all that. And Professor Cheah is a very perfect example of this, combined with the engineer and the entrepreneur. This is a very remarkable example. Now, given his aerospace background, perhaps he will follow the example of this other physics entrepreneur, Elon Musk, and launch his product into outer space for eternity. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you.